Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. I'm Matt,
I'm Eric.
and we're going to be trying to figure out what your favorite scary movie is. That's right, we're talking about Scream 6 and the Scream franchise. I just probably destroyed my vocal cords there for no apparent reason.
No, it
Uh,
was worth it.
yes. Yeah, my wife doesn't think it was worth it. She's got some questions. But we're just going to dive right in. We're looking the biggest release of the week this week was Scream 6. We get this lovable group back together, including Scream 4's Kirby Reed, played by Hayden Panettiere. They're now in New York City, and you know what? They're in college because this entire extension of the franchise has merely been trying to redo the original films and hope that no one notices and make some pithy comments about it. So we do indeed get some pithy comments. We get some reductive discussion about the nature of film franchises and a lot of different cinematic things, a couple of good shots across the bow of people that use Letterboxd. And some other fun things. But in the midst of that, we do get some pretty cool killer sequences. We get some very creative sequences. There's a sequence on a subway that was one of my favorite things I think I've seen in any of the films, any of the Scream films. I thought that was pretty neat. They definitely upped the body count, something they were looking for here. And then we get a third act reveal that happened. Eric, I thought this for me it was an improvement over Scream 5, which I'm sure we'll get to when we talk about the rest of the franchise, which I did not love. This is the first film in the franchise without Nev Campbell, but Courtney Cox is there, Hayden Panettiere is there. I thought it was better than the last one. I'm going to give it a mild thumbs up, but I wasn't in love with it as many as some other people, and I think you actually liked it quite a bit more than me.
Um, I sort of did. I am a huge fan of this franchise. Scream 4 was actually the first horror movie that I went out of my way to spend money to see in theaters. Um, I I was older. I just hadn't been like going to see scary movies. And so I had never seen Scream 1, 2 or 3 and like that kind of sucked me in, and so my interest in the franchise comes from I think a little bit of a different place, but what I'm always expecting from it is a balance between self like commentary on the horror genre and love for the horror genre. And this feels like the commentary on the horror genre is like sound bites, not really written into the story, but the love for the horror genre is there from the opening. Just the casting of Samara Weaving is one of the most clever things I think about the movie. And um that was probably be,
It's
the
because these
closest.
guys directed Ready or Not, which if you haven't seen it, you
Mhm,
should go see it.
you should. And that's probably the closest I'll get to a spoiler when it comes to this, but it just like I will say there are so many twists and turns in this that it's funny. I've been thinking about, you commented the body count is bigger, and I've been trying to think like, is it? Because of some things that we can't really talk about, but um people are durable. And you know eh,
Yeah, I mean, there's suspension of disbelief, and then there's whatever it takes to believe that Chad and Mindy are still fine.
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned them. I wasn't sure whether I was going to mention them, but it's like, come on. Like, and clearly, these characters are your Randy, and one of the things that people still talk to Jamie Kennedy about to this day is why, oh, why did Randy have to die? And there's, the blatant commentary of being out in the open with a scary van nearby is exactly how my uncle died. And like, I don't know. Like, I really like these characters. I don't need them trying to hammer themselves into this core four thing, like that joke between them. I don't care how much they roll their eyes and try and be self aware. I'm like, that joke is just flat for me. But I like that core four characters. For one, I will never get over enjoying the technicality that she's Sam Loomis, like from Halloween.
Yeah, and they really, quite honestly, after two films, I'm tired of them. The connection to Billy Loomis, either they're doing something with it or they aren't. And to this point, they seems like there's no intention other than it'll be cool. We'll get Skeet Ulrich to pop up a few times and try to watermark his face so people don't realize it's been 30 years.
Yeah, that doesn't work for me. It didn't work for me in 5. It didn't work for me in this. Um, I like the idea of a character, a lead, because Sydney Prescott is one of my favorite. She's like my favorite. Whether you call it a final girl or whatever you call it, like leads
Scream
in a
Queen.
horror franchise, a scream queen, just because of the durability and the willingness to pack a punch. And I think this is a good sort of evolution of that, to have a lead that is constantly, well, I have to defend myself, I have to kill, I have to be what a killer is. So how far am I going to go down that road? Absolutely fascinating to me. And I like the idea that other people are calling her a killer and she doesn't know, and she's trying to have a life but she can't really, and all of this stuff they handle with a little bit more sensitivity, and it's a little more believable than I think. I felt like Scream 5 was a little more melodramatic with that stuff, a little more heavy-handed. And I don't know. I'm actually talking more than I think this movie gave me to chew on. Like, I think, like you said, they went to college in Scream 2, so they went to college in Scream 6.
Which they even call out at one point.
Right.
Like they're trying to be meta. I've wondered, I think the pair that directs are doing an okay job.
Yeah.
The opening for this one was very creative and one of the most fascinating openings I've seen. I
Right.
actually liked I was kind of on the fence about the newbie characters, but I think it was just the overall construction of Scream 5. But they really coalesce in the middle of this. I was even interested in Jenna Ortega and Mesa Gooding's potential budding romance
Mhm.
here. I liked that core four. I actually thought it was kind of a cute nickname. That didn't hit me as the same way it did to you with the core four. I was kind of almost buying into that. I could have accepted that we probably aren't going to see Nev Campbell again, and I thought maybe we would not see Courtney Cox again, although they left that incredibly ambiguous at the end. I'm not sure I bought into Kirby Reed, FBI agent.
Yeah.
That was a
It was
twist. I'm not sure.
it was believable when they were doing something with her character towards the end. I was like, "Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe," but
I liked the attack in the apartment and that escape. I thought there was some good tension there. I really loved the subway sequence. That entire subway sequence worked, and that had some of the humor and it baked in there and some of the tension. That was really good. The final, to me, the two biggest flameouts of these movies have been the final killer reel and final stabbing act. It was incredibly painful in Scream 5. It was more disappointing. I'll agree with you. It was more just disappointing and weird in this one.
well, and overall, I just the one thumb up for me also. Like,
Yeah, it's better than 5, but I'm going to be curious to see where it lands in your franchise rankings, which we're going to do in a minute.
I'll
Because
just say real quick, these are the right directors for this franchise. I think
not the right writers.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking too. They had the same two writers, which are not the directors, for 5 and 6, and the problems and the trying to get too cutesy and trying to make these meta comments on film that just aren't working. It's like they don't and totally understand what Kevin Williamson was doing, and that's the critique I've seen most commonly, even from people that liked it, or like, this would be better if Kevin Williamson was there, or somebody else that was not trying to show their work quite as much, maybe.
Well, that key thing, they brought up Luke Skywalker again in this movie. They keep acting like Scream was supposed to be some kind of commentary on film discourse and film fans at large. And I get that Randy in Scream 2 went to film class, so they mentioned more movies, but the rules are in fandom for horror. And it's
And
like,
for classic horror,
yeah,
Scream was incredibly creative in the way that it took the slasher genre and created the new wave slasher genre. The original slasher genre, as we talked about when we did Halloween, they had kind of these they didn't call them morality codes, but that was certainly how it played out. Any, the heroine was the person that avoided and eschewed risky behavior, wasn't, with their boyfriend, wasn't doing drugs, wasn't drinking, was just doing their job. That's how you survived. And it wasn't just Halloween, it was Prom Night, it was Friday the 13th, it was all of them kind of followed that same. And what made Scream clever at the time was going into a well-worn path with these well-worn character archetypes and saying, we don't need these rules anymore.
right.
But to me, the new Scream talks about like rules and franchise, but it doesn't really do anything new in that standpoint, and it doesn't do anything with them or add to the discourse.
Mm-hmm.
So that was us. We ended up, I think you can probably tell this is like a fence. For me, it was like 3 out of 5, the mild thumbs up. There were things I really liked. There's still problems for me. That's why I'm going to be curious. I know where I have them ranked, where you're going to rank them. So as we go through here, we are going to turn to the portion of the show where we're looking at the entire Scream franchise. So here we have we have just a fun placeholder slide. So I will go first and I will give mine. So I'm going to start at the bottom. There are 6 films total, and number 6 for me is Scream 3, which still just, I'm not entirely sure what they were trying to do. It's sad because of the age that I am. That was the first one that I got to see during its original theatrical run. I've seen Scream on the big screen since when they've brought it back. But I remember I was in high school when Scream came out. I watched it at home. And I watched Scream 2. I was a senior in high school when it came out, and Scream 3 was like my second year of college. I was hyped. I'm like, I get to see one in the theater, and I will never forget that disappointment, which was closely followed up by number 5 for me, which is Scream 5 from 2022. I think when I originally rated it, I gave it like 2.5 stars. After rewatching it, I actually lowered it because the third act made me even more frustrated. I actually have Scream 6 next up at number 4. I thought it was an improvement, but it did not crack the top 3 for me. Scream 4 is at number 3 for me. I enjoyed that one. I know not everyone loved it. I thought it had some clever plot things. I thought it worked. Number 2 is Scream 2, and then the original one is number 1 for me.
I think we're going to be strikingly similar. Scream 3, for all that works in it, ultimately the motivation with the villain and the forced kind of trilogy thing, like I can enjoy a lot about Scream 3. One thing that I won't get over is when I finally got into the franchise, I'm watching 1, and it almost feels borderline genius the way that it's dealing with its, the writing and the actions of the characters and all that kind of stuff is coming together. 2 holds up pretty well. Not sure how I feel about the ending. And then 3, the gas leak kill is one of the dumbest things. And that, having a moment that is one of the dumbest things I've seen a character do on screen, is a reason that Scream 3 is my bottom, this number 6, and Scream 5 is the other one. And I'm sorry to say this, but it's Dewey. That movie actually might be the bottom for me. I go back and forth because you don't have a 5-movie franchise about the concept that when you think a villain is dead, they're not dead. And then have one of your lead characters who's a police officer who's been trying to earn, survival for 4 movies, go up and just like wait and pause in front of someone and maybe try to take the mask off and like hesitate and like just they killed this character by making him act dumb after 5 movies. And then they hung all of the emotional weight of Sydney and the other characters on that death that didn't feel earned. And so I didn't feel like nothing about that movie worked to me. Nothing.
Well, they had no idea what to do with the legacy characters in that movie, because I almost liked it better when they just didn't even try to have ingratiate Sydney in this one. I mean,
Yeah,
Gail's always going to be a reporter or whatever. That's fine. I don't really feel like I totally need her. They almost tried to make her like a mother role in this one, which didn't work for me at all. Yeah. But in 5, they didn't know what to do with any of the legacy characters. They were just there.
And that notion that, like, I felt really bad because I really love the character Sydney Prescott, but her just being like, I'm going to take my family and just get as far away from this mess as possible. Great.
Which makes you wonder about like a year prior when she's like, I'm going to abandon my family and go back to my hometown and see if I can get stabbed again for no apparent reason.
Yeah. So yeah, that and you put on top of that this idea you're supposed to buy into the motivation of characters who are just like angry film nerds online. And it's like, okay, so the idea, I don't know. I go for 8 years. Okay, so it's actually, I'm going to flip it. Scream 5, my bottom. Scream 3, right above that. And then I'm going to say, this is hard. Scream 2 and 4 and 6 all have their ups and downs. And I really appreciated like the feel of being in New York in this one. And there are just the core thing that I think is going to make me put Scream 6 in my number 4 slot is gonna be that just the whole idea of it being attached to the family from Scream. Either lean into that, I think, from the beginning and let those people be up in the air. And the whole idea is, well, we know in the past family comes for revenge, and that's a horror rule. So you let there be tension with that and build into that.
It's almost just leaning on, if you recall, they were totally trying to snipe Scream 2 without entirely sniping Scream 2, and that's where there were just too many times that I got annoyed by that.
And I don't want, I feel bad because I always feel like it's like we're going to talk about it and that might spoil things for people, but it is Sunday, you know, the opening weekend has come. I feel like we're not being too specific about it.
If you're watching this show, you pretty well know that we're going to talk about these movies.
Yeah. So I'm going to put Scream 6 there, but I really think these are sometimes interchangeable. Then I'm going to put Scream 2. And I think that the problems of Scream 2, like they readily admit to, where the people who ended up being the killers in that movie weren't even originally intended to be the killers. They were bit at by the internet and had to change focus halfway through. And it kind of feels like somewhat unfocused. And it just, a character that's there in the background for half of the movie is suddenly very important. But there are some amazing set pieces and visuals in that one that I really enjoy. But then I have to put Scream 4, not just because it was my introduction to the franchise, it was the first time I saw all of this, but I do think characters were being played against type. Like you would think of, I forget her name, but she ends up being the killer as the next
Emma
Sydney.
Roberts.
Emma Roberts' character, yes.
Julia Roberts' niece.
Yeah, and Kirby as being, you know, a toe-to-toe film nerd that is atypical for what you'd expect. Like, I really enjoy her character, and I was really glad to see her back. And
even if they did make her preposterously an FBI agent.
Yeah, and so I can see how for some people the fourth movie ends up being kind of like just trying to reboot the first movie and trying to wink at it and kind of failing and doing this, and everything looks like it has Vaseline all over it. And yes, I understand that too. But like that set piece with Alison Brie and just like so many moments, everything is a little bit vicious. Everything is a little bit humorous. And I buy the motivations of those villains more than any of the villains in the movies I've ranked below it. Like there's just something about like Billy Loomis's mom and about like Richie's family that is just like, how do you not know they exist in the middle of like a whirlwind of media storm after the death of somebody? Like, I don't know, whatever. So that leaves Scream 1 for my top one. So 1, 4, 2, 6, 3, 5.
Yeah, pretty close. Just flipped a couple. I probably like Scream 2 more than some people because of my age.
Hmm.
This, I will be honest, part of me wondered. I don't know if you remember when Star Wars: The Last Jedi came out. All the people that kind of grew up with Star Wars in the 70s and the 80s were sort of cheesed off
Hmm.
um, at The Last Jedi. A lot of people didn't like that's where it was really split with the older fans and younger fans. Last Jedi ends up being like my favorite Star Wars movie.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the one that Ryan Johnson did, the middle one where
No.
you have Hermit Luke. There was a lot of people that just were like the get off my almost they get off my lawn with Star Wars.
Right.
And some of the times when I was feeling annoyed watching Scream 6, a part of me wondered if it's like now we've finally hit a point in a different franchise where I'm the get off my lawn, because I've seen a lot of the younger wave of critics really love it. Oh, it's an incredible return. And I'm like, this is reductive. And I don't know if that's just because I'm getting old or what, but I have thought about it.
I don't think so. I just think there's a line that people were really positive on the new Scream when it came out as well, and I just can't stand that movie. Like, I'm sorry. So,
well, the thing is, I'm sure we're going to get a 7 here pretty soon. I'm honestly,
it's been greenlit already.
I hope that we get different writers,
Mm-hmm.
but also I would kind of be happy if they let legacy characters go altogether.
Mm-hmm.
That's just
I'm
might be an
cool with
improvement.
the core 4. I agree, and I think it'd be
I'm
nice
glad
to see
that
those
you're
characters
buying into that.
Well, they have a name now. What are you gonna do? Try and be countercultural and not use the term that was handed up, because then you're doing a thing. So it's like, you have to.
That I am wondering if they'll ingratiate Kirby back in. I think they might.
I hope they do. I like the idea that you take the Dewey character and you turn them into the savvy film critic.
Yeah.
Like, I want them to play with that more. I think that was a huge missed opportunity where she was sitting next to Randy's uncle and they're going back and forth on these like film opinions, some even more recent, and like that idea that they can be sitting in a room and they can have a very serious police discussion on what the appropriate procedure is, but also wink wink have a sort of film discussion about like, why would someone be doing this if it has to do with movies, and that can all like be earned in one character. I really like that. I would like to see that.
That's the thing there. With the exception of Sam, they're almost all film nerds now, because if you think about back to when Jenna Ortega answers the phone the first time, her answer about horror movies, that was actually one of the only lines where I kind of laughed in Scream 5, is after she 86 is the dude, she's like, I still prefer the Babadook.
Yeah.
Well, that'll do it for this week. Many of you are probably going to be turning it over to the Oscars, which take off, I believe, in just about 35 minutes, bringing to end what feels like the most interminable awards season that we've had. Maybe that's just because I've been dealing with awards season since October. It's been
a huge, even just sitting on kind of the sidelines of it, it's been something else this year, with people following things across multiple awards and what that means for the next ones.
Everything Everywhere All at Once has literally been out for a year.
Yeah, 1 year.
It made its South by Southwest debut a year ago.
Yeah.
So I thought I would ask you, do you have a pick that you think is going to win Best Picture tonight?
See, the thing is, I don't know what all is nominated under what category for sure.
So the Best Picture nominees: Triangle of Sadness, Tar, Elvis, All Quiet on the Western Front, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Avatar: The Way of Water. I'm going to forget something. The Fablemans, Women Talking, Top Gun Maverick. Ooh, I totally did.
That's a
forget.
lot of.
The Banshees of Inisherin. There's 10.
Oh wow, there's a full 10. Okay.
I knew I was going to forget something. Thankfully, I didn't.
So the ones that feel like the Oscar bait picks are the Fablemans and All Quiet on the Western Front. But I'd like to see it go probably to Everything Everywhere All at Once, just because of the amount of emotion and imagination and the sheer display of different types of filmmaking. I feel like if you're going to have a movie that showcases what is a movie and you had to pick one and somebody had like never seen a movie before, which one are you going to pick out of that to show people an experience? I'd probably pick that one.
Yeah, and Everything Everywhere All at Once was the leading nominee getter, I believe, with 11. I think it is going to win Best Picture. I think it's going to win Best Director, Best Actress, and Best Supporting Actor too. But we will find out in about a half an hour, and probably in about 3 hours, Ricky and I will be on live for the last half hour of the Oscars, where I don't know what will happen if Austin Butler doesn't win, and we're on live.
Yeah, he's just gonna be depressed and quiet.
It might be just me for a while. Yeah, it might be just me. But I'm excited to see how it shakes out. I'm excited for some of the musical numbers. We get the musical number from RRR. They're going to do live, which should be a heck of a lot of fun. The marketing for it has been fun. I hope Jimmy Kimmel is fun. I'm holding out hope. Next week, we will be back looking at Shazam: The Fury of the Gods, and the soon-to-be demise of the Snyderverse DCEU. We will look back at the DCEU we have, the oddly couple of films we're still getting that they want you to get hyped for, even though they're going to be meaningless for the continuation of a universe, and all that fun. And then Eric and I will be off on March 26th, but back on April 2nd. So that just gives you a snapshot of our schedule. But until then, go out there, watch